Hi and welcome back. I'm Chris. This, as you know or may know, is my friend Josh. I have Anna on the floor and I have Rollo next to me. Today I want to talk to you about, in this episode of Training Tips, collars. Collars versus harnesses, right? Big issue in the Greyhound community. A lot of people really support the idea of having the dog wear a harness. They encourage that. The claims are that you have more control over the dog if you're walking the dog on a harness. I disagree with that principle. As a trainer for many years, as a CGC evaluator, as someone who's competed in obedience, in agility, in tracking, has earned titles in obedience, agility, tracking, trained many different breeds of dogs, I can tell you that a collar and a leash are going to give you a lot more control over your dog than a harness ever will. I have harnesses, I have a lot of them. I have dogs that wear harnesses when they need to. A dog that has a tracheal issue, a throat issue, then they will, and I don't want any pressure on the dog's neck, then I'll put a harness on the dog when I want to walk the dog. Typically speaking, that comes later in their life, at least in my pack anyway. So they're wearing a harness maybe in their senior years, but that's after years of learning how to walk with a pack of dogs on a collar and a leash. Okay, so let's get right into it. Josh is wearing a typical martingale collar, and people who own retired racing greyhounds, regardless of what group you got your dog from, I'm sure the dog came home wearing a martingale collar or a no-slip collar. Love these collars. They're easy to keep clean. You can wash them, which is important to do on a pretty regular basis, right? All of my dogs are wearing a martingale collar of different widths depending on the size of dog. The collar, the martingale collar, is a no-slip collar. It allows you, once you put it on, it slips right over your dog's head, and then you adjust it so that the dog can wear it comfortably. I can get my fingers under it, I can wear it comfortably, and yet when a leash is attached to it, it will give me another couple of inches and cinch up and tighten without, constricting the dog's breathing, but it will tighten enough to ensure that the collar will not slip off of the dog's head. Greyhounds, aerodynamic in their shape, in their physical characteristics, and the shape of their head and the size of their head in relation to their neck would make a regular buckle collar, a regular snap collar, or a poorly adjusted martingale collar slip off very easily. It just slips right off because there's nothing to stop it, versus the head of a big pit bull where the neck is much smaller, or even the head of this Chihuahua, which is bigger in proportion than his neck. These guys much more aerodynamic. Okay, so wearing a martingale collar is essential, but also that it's adjusted on a regular basis. You need to check it. You need to make sure that when you need to use that collar and leash, that the dog isn't able to slip out of it. Okay? It only cinches so far, as you well know, because then it will hit both of the rings on the main part of the collar and stop. So you're not going to choke your dog when the dog is wearing a martingale collar. Okay? Harnesses versus collars. These are runners. This is not a cart dog. This isn't a dog that pulls a weight. This isn't a dog that's been bred to pull a weight or pull a sled. There's no reason to wear the harness. Very often, when the dog is wearing the harness, you're going to discover you have a lot less control over the dog. The dog can put their full weight into the harness and pull forward. The dog can in fact become a gladiator if you've got an aggressive type of a dog that's very dog aggressive toward cats, small animals, other people. Wearing a harness, the dog can put its full weight into the harness and just keep going forward, something like a gladiator. Whereas when I've got the dog on a collar and leash, I can pull the dog's head away from whatever it's distracted by or whatever its attention is on, and have much more control over it. A simple correction with the leash attached to the collar, a simple correction, a simple immediate jerk and a release on the collar is something that is in tune with how the dog has developed naturally. Okay, this part of the dog's neck, either side, this musculature, the strongest part on the dog's body. This is the area that the mother will correct her puppies. If she's a good mother, and most dogs are, she's reprimanding her puppies, she will grab the puppy by the scruff of the neck and give it a little shake to tell it, no, that's not appropriate. Other dogs will do that in a pack situation. This is where they will go. They will go for this area of the neck. They will give a shake. This is where the puppy's litter mates will go for this area right here. This exerts dominance. This exerts correction within the pack. The dog already understands that psychologically. It's part of how dogs develop. It's part of how they understand. So collars and leashes take that kind of basic natural principle and allow you to employ it in training. It's the idea behind a training collar. Some people refer to this as a choke chain. I don't like that because if it's used correctly, it's never going to choke the dog. In obedience, again, this is the principle that it's being used, that it's going to employ an immediate jerk and a release, and if the collar is on the dog correctly, an immediate jerk and then a release, right? It's going to apply a correction right here, if you will, a pinch right here in this musculature of the dog's neck. This is why they're very commonly used in obedience training. All of my dogs are, well, except for Josh, are familiar with this collar. They understand this is part of training. As a matter of fact, you might see them come walking over because they're going to wonder, oh, are we going to do something? You have the collar out. Greyhounds, I would never recommend a greyhound wearing this type of a collar. Unlike the martingale collar, this one won't release. Okay. Also, because of the greyhound's anatomy, I want to protect that throat. They do not have a thick coat around their neck. They don't have the protection that many other dogs do. So I'm not going to use this metal collar on a greyhound. I'm going to use it on many other breeds. All of the dogs in my house are very familiar with this collar, have used it and trained with it for years and years and years. The greyhound, because of his softer nature, doesn't even need this type of a correction. The martingale collar gives me as much correction as I need to control the dog, to teach the dog, to train the dog. And you just heard Rollo growl. He's watching traffic. He's a very vocal breed. He's watching traffic, and that's why he's growling. Okay? So, no harnesses on my dogs unless there's a medical need for it. Anna's wondering why we have the collar out. She wants to know, are we going outside to do some work? Are we going to go outside and go for a WALK? She's very interested in that. Also, on collars and leashes, I know that your dog came with probably a matching nylon leash, a 6-foot nylon leash, and you were taught how to wrap and cinch the handle of the leash on your wrist, and that's all fine and good, and that's perfectly acceptable. And I would recommend, again, if you're going to use the nylon leash, to cinch the handle around your wrist just for added protection. I personally use a leather leash because leather in my hands doesn't slip as much. It doesn't slip through my hands the way that a nylon leash slips through my hands. I have greater control, especially if I'm walking more than one dog at the same time. I'm using a nylon leash. I'm using a leather leash, not a nylon leash. Okay? I prefer a leather leash to nylon, and only 6 foot. As you know, cardinal rule with greyhounds, but I would say with all dogs. And what do you see? You see a truck. I know. You're fierce. You're fierce. I know. You see a fierce. You're a fierce guy. No retractable leashes. Ever. No retractable leashes ever, and you really don't need anything longer than a 6-foot leash to safely walk your greyhound, to keep your greyhound safely under control. You can go a little bit shorter. You can use a 4-foot leash. You can use a traffic length leash to keep your dog right at your side. But never, ever, ever a retractable leash. So that's my spiel on collars and leashes. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Until next time, love your dog, praise your dog, and remember what you've got at the end of the leash. Thank you.